Fabius Foster, President of the Emanuel County Democratic Committee. Thank you and welcome to our event. The urgency of now. I'm only here to announce our MC, Miss Janet Jackson. Y'all give it up for her.
I am so happy to be with you all this evening. As introduced, I am Janice Allen Jackson. I am the host of the Local Matters podcast, which is available on Apple, SoundCloud, and Spotify, based in Augusta, Georgia. And our purpose is to help people become more confident voters and more engaged citizens. So I am pleased to be a part of this program called The Urgency of Now. And of course, we welcome Mr. Roland Martin to Southeast Georgia. Happy to have you in our state. Please give it up for him. We always, of course, want to get this off on the right foot, and the right foot is with prayer. So we are going to invite Delmas Mosley up to give us an opening prayer.
Let us bow our heads. Father, in the name of Jesus, we ask that thou will bless, guide, and direct this occasion. We ask you to give us knowledge, wisdom, and understanding in the direction in which we are to take. Bless each one that's under the sound of my voice. And we give you the praise for being here, and we thank you for it. In the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ, we pray. And the people of God say amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. Our very first speaker for this evening is someone who has been a guest on Local Matters, and she is Ms. Alicia Thomas Searcy. She is with us this evening as a candidate for the office of school superintendent for the state of Georgia. Please give it up for Ms. Searcy.
Thank you. Good evening, Southeast Georgia. How y'all doing? It is an honor to be here, Brother Roland Martin. It is an honor to stand on this stage with you and see you again. The last time we talked, I was on your show, and I was running to be the Democratic nominee for state school superintendent. And because of the great people in this room and all over the state of Georgia, we won the primary in a four-way race with no runoff and won all 159 counties in Georgia. So thank y'all. And to this esteemed panel, and my new friends, Pastor, I will not be long, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak for just a few minutes. I appreciate the fact that I see so many young people here as well. A little bit about me. I am the first African American elected to the Georgia House of Representatives from Cobb County. Amen? To the young people in the room, I got elected at the age of 22. Yes, so I'm saying that because I need you to know that we need leadership of all ages, of all generations, and you deserve to have a seat at the table just like anybody else. I served 12 years. That was 6 terms. Spent all of that time working on trying to improve our public education system, and then left politics because I hate politics. Roland, people lie when you're in politics. They make up stuff, they tell rumors, and all I want to do is help children. So I left politics, went back to school, got a master's degree, went through a couple of superintendent training programs, got some great results as a superintendent. Our elementary school had a 43 CCRPI score. That's the state index. That's a 43 out of 100. The middle school had a 65. Teacher retention rate was 25%. But when my team and I got in there, using the skills and training that I had, we got that 43 to an 85. Thank you. That 65 to an 81. And the teacher retention rate from 25% to 75%. Thank you. And so I'm sharing that with you because we have a school system that's not working. And we have a state school superintendent who's been in office for 8 years, and I'm pretty sure he's been asleep the whole time. Because if you were awake, you would know that there are some serious issues in our schools, whether it's special education, whether it is the curriculum that we are learning or not, whether it's the dropout rate, you name it, we've got challenges. And when you are asleep at the wheel, that is not acceptable. And so I'm running for state school superintendent because we need a state school superintendent who cares, who shows up in Southeast Georgia, who understands that every child in every corner of the state deserves to have access to a high-quality education. And you know, it got real serious for me on May 24th, the day that I won the primary, because that was also the day of the Uvalde shooting. And I will never forget that day because there were 19 children who went to school and never returned. And 2 teachers who were called to teach who never got to go back home. And so on May 25th, the next day, our 15-year-old was trying to go to school, and my husband and I were afraid to send her because, like so many parents, we were just concerned, like, what would happen? But we let her go to school, and when she came back, we sat down at the kitchen table and asked, you know, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? And Layla said something to me that I'll never forget. She said, we're talking about it, it's all over TikTok, but we know nobody's going to do anything. And so when young people say, we don't think anybody's going to do anything, we've got to. And so I'm running for state school superintendent because I need Layla and the 1.7 million children in our state to know that you deserve to have a state school superintendent who will do something to keep you safe in school. I need educators and teachers in particular to know that I see you. I understand the frustrations that you are having. I understand that you are overworked, overburdened, asked to take on every job except for being a teacher. And you deserve to have a state school superintendent who will do something about your burnout. And then finally, as I close, again, as I look at these young people, I think about the world that we live in and the world that it can be. But if you were to Google what schools looked like in the 1800s, they look very similar to how they look today. And so why are we still trying to deliver this telegram education to a TikTok generation? Y'all feel me? And so we wonder why kids don't feel excited about school. It's because we have a state superintendent who's been asleep for a long time. And so voting starts on October 17th. And somebody told me that in Southeast Georgia, sometimes y'all don't go and vote. Is that true? Y'all gonna change that this election, though. I believe that, because when you look at the slate of candidates that we have, it's historic. We have the most qualified, the most exciting, the most talented candidates that we've seen in a very long time. And so it ought to fire you up about all the things that are happening in our communities and knowing that voting can change those things. And so join me, because it's now your turn to do something. And make sure you take 10, 15 people to the polls with you. Make sure you vote for my brother, Raphael Warnock. Let's send him back to the United States Senate. He makes me proud when I see him. Proud that he represents our state as the first black United States senator in this state. Make me the first black state school superintendent in this state. And so I thank you for this opportunity. Thanks to all of the organizers, Brother Keith, Brother Al, thank you all for what you are doing. Thank you, Roland, for being here, for putting Swainsboro on the map. That's why I appreciate you, brother, for all that you do, not just where you live, but all over the United States of America. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you for what you're doing. Let's go make history, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. It is my next duty to introduce our panelists. We have an esteemed group here, and we will start off with none other than my state senator, Mr. Harold Jones. He is representative of the senator for Georgia Senate District 22, which includes most of Augusta and Richmond County. Thank you very much for being with us today. Our next panelist is Mr. Keith McCants. He is with the Rural Political Operative Advocate. Thank you so much for being here. Next, we have veteran legislator, State Senator David Lucas. Thank you for making your way to Southeast Georgia. And finally, we have from the NAACP, Emanuel County branch, Jonathan Hampton. Thank you very much.
All right, let's get it. All right, so here's what we're going to do. First of all, we're not going to talk about why it's important to vote. We already know that, okay? People spend way too much time on that wastes time. I believe one of the fundamental problems when we talk about why people don't vote, we don't talk about issues. What is it that they care about? So when it comes to this community, what's the dominant issue? What should people in this community be focused on when it comes to the issues up and down the ballot, who they should be supporting for U.S. Senator, for governor? What's the dominant issue?
Jonathan Hampton, first of all, I want to just say thank you all for coming to Swainsboro-Emanuel County, and thank you for being here and your interest in rural Georgia. In our communities, because of where we are, there are a lot of grandmothers and a lot of grandfathers, aunts and uncles that are raising our children. And we have an expectation that our children will go to school, be successful, and come home and continue those same successes. However, we don't engage our elderly community who are actually raising these children. And so something along the lines of Medicare expansion is one of the main things that we need to start talking about in our communities, and community engagement with our older population so that they can prepare our students at home for the same successes that they experience in the schools.
So you say Medicaid expansion, what has been the problem? What has been the block?
Well, one of the things that when I think about Medicaid expansion, I think of when you think about being in an airplane, they say the first thing you need to do is put on the mask to save yourself. Well, with our young folks that are going home to folks that are elderly folks, and when I say elderly, we automatically think 65 and older. But what we're seeing in our communities is that grandmother and grandfather are now 55. And if we expand that Medicaid to them, they're more likely to be able to be prepared mentally and physically, health-wise, to be able to serve our children. So expanding that Medicaid so that they can receive benefits as well helps in that instance.
Now, of course, that was one of the impetuses of the Affordable Care Act. We see other states, but some states accepted, some did not. A number of southern states did not. Yet when you look at the health numbers, those same southern states sit at the top when it comes to having fundamental problems with health. And so it's sort of kind of crazy that you would have red states, southern states, not wanting to expand Medicaid to get their constituents healthier when they're sicker. I'm just saying it's kind of basic to me.
And absolutely. I mean, the fact of the matter is, when you say what's been the block, it's been politics. I mean, the fact of the matter is Republicans refuse to actually expand Medicaid for the state of Georgia. Even, as you said, it actually would get your constituents healthier, and it also actually save the state money. But it actually fits. When you go back a long time ago, even during the New Deal, when Southern governors and Southern senators refused to allow the New Deal money to come straight to the South unless it actually went through them. And the purpose of that was to make sure that certain segments might be to participate in that. And quite frankly, the segment they were trying to keep out were African Americans. And so we've seen this kind of historical dynamic where you actually do not do for all of your constituents to basically make sure that some do not actually advance. And so it is politics. When we start talking about why vote, we've already hit number one. Politics controls that, and that is something I'm convinced that we'll be able to change in the legislature. I think there actually may be some will to actually do that on some level now, but we actually have to make substantial changes, whether it's in the legislature and definitely in the governor's house, without a doubt.
There's a reality to politics, and that is especially in many of these southern states. The fact of the matter is, largely white voters vote Republican. Black voters vote Democrat. Reverend William Barber with the Poor People's Campaign Repairs of the Breach. They talk about the fact that there are 140 million poor and low-income workers in this country, and the reality is the majority of them are white voters. And so when he was in North Carolina, when they started Moral Mondays, they started with 17 people, and he said he was at a parade and he said a redneck with a Confederate flag draped around his neck came up to him, but he had tears in his eyes, and he said, "Reverend Barber, thank you for fighting for our hospitals." Because these same white conservative voters living in rural areas, it hit them when their hospitals started shutting down, when Republicans in North Carolina refused to accept Medicaid expansion dollars. And it hit them when they said, wait a minute, that's our hospital. They started dying because it was too far traveling to another hospital. And so what are the conversations been like in this community, in other areas, getting folk who may traditionally vote Republican to understand that that issue is one that impacts them, that aligns with what their concerns are, but doesn't align with their politics? Anyone can take that.
Well, the biggest problem, Roland, is the politics. It was a policy decision by the governor, Nathan Deal, when he came in, that they would not accept Medicaid expansion. We have over 500,000 Georgians who have no insurance. Medicaid expansion would be just like the Express card, American Express card. When you go to the hospital, they're going to get some money. They might not get all of it, but they would get some money. That helps to keep the doors open. We just had a hospital in Atlanta that closed its doors, and now this governor gave $130 million to Greater Hospital to try to take care of those patients who were going to that particular hospital in the metro Atlanta area. But we have problems everywhere else. In Albany, Georgia, Phoebe Putnam, they're losing about $12 million a day. They can't sustain that. There's no way that the state has.
You see, they're losing $12 million a day.
Yeah.
And they're losing, because I cover city government, county government. They're losing $12 million a day because
they take care of folks who have no means of paying.
Right. So when people, first of all, the law says if someone comes in, they have to be treated.
If they take helping funds.
Right. Now, this is, again, what's crazy to me. The state's actually paying for that. That means, taxpayers are footing the bill for that. So when you're rejecting Medicaid expansion, you literally are actually burdening Georgia taxpayers even more so because you refuse to accept the expansion funds.
There's no question about it. We're putting money in, but it's not coming to us. It's going to those states who accept. Take Kentucky, for instance. That's where Mitch McConnell's from. But they had,
one of the sickest, brokest states in America.
And yeah, they had coal workers, miners, and everything that had all kind of health problems. But they accepted Medicaid expansion
because they elected a Democratic governor.
Right.
No, I'm just stating the fact. I'm just stating the fact. Go ahead.
And I think one of the things when you asked about how that dialogue is taking place, I think when you see Stacey Abrams and also Senator Warnock, they both have been very open as far as trying to take that dialogue beyond the African American community to all communities who are affected by it. And I think especially Stacey Abrams has been very effective at doing that. They both have, but that has really been a mission that she's been on. And I think that's something that we all have to continue to do. And the heart of that also talks about government responsibility, and that the government actually does have responsibility to all of its citizens. And so you almost have to change persons' attitudes about that too. But I will say that I think that the party, and I think especially Stacey Abrams, especially Senator Warnock, they've done something a little bit different. They are actively pursuing that vote in a way that's different than normally Democrats have. A lot of times when you start talking about whether it's rural whites or more conservative, we talked about conservative principles and tried to make them think that we were sort of conservative. They were actually talking about principles that are going to affect their daily lives, and Medicaid expansion is definitely.
Well, I always get a kick out of folk who talk about I don't want government in my life. It's a whole bunch of folk in Florida who were saying that until Hurricane Ian came in and destroyed, and now they mad saying the federal government moving too slow. Now hold on, the last week you didn't want to talk to them, but now moving too slow, and that really is part of the problem. The psych, just how nuts I think a lot of people are when they say I don't want government in my life until I desperately need government in my life. And when I keep trying to explain to people, there is no aspect of anybody's life right now that government does not have a role in it. The day you born, the birth certificate is a government document. When you get vaccinated to go to school, that's a government document. When you get married, government document. Divorce, government document. When you die, that death certificate is a government document. And so it is amazing when people act as if that, oh, I don't want that. But, and I'm not saying government is the answer to everything, but I understand, as you said, responsible government and the role it plays. And I think health is one of those roles.
Now, one of the reasons why that we need Medicaid expansion, because in my hometown, Macon County, which is about 2 hours from here, we lost our hospital back in 2007. Okay. Ever since then, the county has gone down the drain. What I mean by that is jobs has closed. They have left the county. They have closed up. I was there at the time when the hospital closed down.
Okay, so the hospital closed down. If somebody gets sick, how far do they have to go?
You have to go to Americas, which is about, the hospital down in Americas is built pretty much outside of the city, towards Lee County, Leesburg. So you're talking about from there to Leesburg about 30, 35 miles. And then if you go into Houston County.
So if there's a health emergency, it's a problem.
It's a problem. And if you go to Houston County nearby to Perry, the closest hospital, you're talking about 30 miles that way. So either way, you got a ways to drive.
So I'm just curious. What is Kemp saying about that? And I'm just curious, again, what is the governor saying to residents in these areas who now have to travel 30, 35, 40, 45 miles to get to a hospital?
He's not saying anything, because the thing about it is he can say, well, we can't afford Medicaid expansion because it costs too much. But you come out of Macon County, which is the third poorest county in the state. It may be number one now because too many people like myself, I moved my family out of there to Houston County. Now I'm in Bryan County because I knew that without a hospital there, it is hard to attract industry. And that's what we're lacking over there. I'm saying I think I'm still living over there, but that's where they're lacking. And that's why we need a governor in there who's going to roll up his or her sleeves and give us Medicaid expansion. I don't understand why the opposition towards that, because it'll help the ones who need it the most. And Southwest Georgia needs it more than anybody. Not saying just Southwest Georgia, but across rural Georgia, whether you hear over this way here in Bullock County or Emanuel County, Clay County, over by Alabama, everybody needs Medicaid or insurance. So I just don't understand why he is so opposed to giving citizens something that it will help them and as well as improve our lives, So I don't understand that.
Good. You want to make a point there? I'm going to make a point before I go to a break. Then we're going to introduce another candidate. Go ahead.
One of the problems, though, the federal money, Medicaid and Medicare, CMS has a 35-mile rule. It has a 35-mile rule, which means
First of all, for the folk who don't know, what's CMS?
It's called the Community Service. Roland, I can't think of the actual name, but they had the last hearing in August.
What CMS is they under Department of Services.
Right.
Got it. Go ahead.
And they had a 35-mile rule because in 23 they're supposed to put up a bunch of money just for rural communities.
Okay, when you say 35-mile rule, what does that mean?
35-mile rule means you can't put a hospital within 35 miles of another hospital. That's road miles. In rural Georgia, rural hospitals closed. They couldn't stay open. They didn't have the funding to stay open. So Senator Warnock and Ossoff, I asked them to weigh in on it because rural Georgia, folks can't afford the gas, or they got to pay somebody to take them to Dublin or some other place to a hospital. And one of the problems is that you take Hancock County, for instance. When I became the senator there, a young lady that was a retired nurse, came back from D.C. to Hancock, brought me the statistics that said that 70% of the folks who had a stroke or a heart attack died. And so I started trying to change the dynamics with rural legislators, because y'all are the ones who have been representing rural Georgia all this time, and y'all hadn't done anything about it. So we've been trying to do something with that. But on the Medicaid expansion, the governor at this particular time went through the legislature, because the governor could accept Medicaid expansion or not accept it, took it to the legislature, and now the governor can't do it. The legislature has to do it.
Wow. And no one gave a damn about those 70% the folks who had strokes and heart attacks and them dying. And if you got to drive 35, 40 miles, the cost of gas and all different things associated with that, nearly taking the day off, all of those things that go with it, just trying to get some health care. Hold tight 1 second. I'm going to go to a break. We come back. We're going to introduce another candidate who's here. Hear from them. They're going to talk about other issues that people care about. Obviously, I'm sure education is one of those issues. Economic development is another one of those issues. So we'll get to that when we come back. Short break. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network, broadcasting live from Swainsboro, Georgia. Back in a moment.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?
Hi, my name is LaToya Luckett.
Yo, it's your man Dion Cole from Blackish, and you watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Stay woke.
Swainsboro, we are very pleased to have Ms. Nikita Hemingway with us this evening. She is also a candidate for statewide office. She is running for the office of Agricultural Commissioner. Welcome. Come on out.
Good evening. It is a pleasure to be here with each and every one of you today. It has been a very long journey, but the most important thing is I knew that my evening had to end here with you. My name is Nikita Hemingway. I am a fifth-generation farmer, an entrepreneur, licensed realtor, former corporate executive, wife, mother, and the Democratic nominee for Commissioner of Agriculture. And when I win my race, see, y'all got it, but the others stopped it. I will be the first African American and the second woman elected to this position in our nation's history. My political journey began 4 years ago when a local county commissioner stood on my farm and told me I would be better off selling my land to Quick Trip than getting him to remove his restrictions. So when I made the decision to run for public office, it wasn't because I wanted to be a politician. It was because I understood the equity in agriculture problem, and I was the most qualified person to solve it. It is our lived experiences that are almost always aligned with our purpose. My grandparents were rice farmers off of the coast of the Savannah River. And for more than 100 years, my family owned 360 acres, and now we own none of it. My grandmother would tell my siblings, cousins, and I how she would sit on her grandparents' porch and watch ships sail out to sea. My journey into adulthood wasn't easy. I was a single mother of 2 long before I was a married mother of 4. And like many African Americans, I knew that in order for me to be the success I dreamt of, my pathway would be through entrepreneurship. So by day, I worked in corporate America. By night, I built my businesses. And I am happy to report that I achieved everything I set out to do as Nikita Tyson long before I became Nikita Hemingway. Before we are able to shatter glass ceilings, we must first shatter perceptions about who is qualified and who isn't. It's not enough to understand that rising food costs are hurting families when you have a mother on the ballot with a plan to end childhood hunger and lower your grocery bill, so go vote. It's not enough to understand that there is no equity in agriculture for small family farms, women, and minorities when you have a black female farmer on the ballot, so go vote. When we say we are fighting for diversity, equity, and inclusion, we must also consider diversity of thought, lived experiences, and leadership. I cannot stress enough to you how much is on the ballot this election cycle. Because if you don't put a check mark by my name, what you're saying is my opponent, who happens to be a 7th-generation farmer, a 5-term elected state senator, who was in Washington, D.C. on January 5th and January 6th, is the person we need representing you. What you're also saying is that this senator who supported Texas' lawsuit against our election results, you're saying that you're okay with them taking away your voting power. And what you're also saying is that this senator who used a black farmer, who partnered with a black farmer to abuse government grants and then left this man penniless, what you're saying is he's better, he's who you want representing you. So it's more than about showing up to vote. It is about the next 4 years, the generation after you, the generation after them. So make a plan to vote. Please vote early. Election day starts, in my opinion, October 17th. And if you have trouble getting there, then make sure that November 8th is the absolute day that you get in line. Thank you.
Thanks a bunch. All right, folks. Let's now talk about. I want to go to an issue. It's been talked about in the state, around the country. I got 4 brothers sitting up here, so let's go right to it. This idea that black men are afraid to support Stacey Abrams, that black men are disenchanted, they don't like what Democrats are doing. What are you hearing? Conversations that you're having, what are you hearing specifically from black men in Georgia during this election cycle?
I'm surprised actually to hear you say that, particularly in our areas, we're having the opposite conversation. And if you follow Stacey Abrams and her platforms, you know specifically that she speaks directly to reinventing or developing African-American males. And so the men in our community benefit greatly from the great work that she's establishing for our communities. And frankly, I'm not really seeing that conversation. We're seeing the other side of it, which I'm grateful for, but I'm disappointed in what I might be hearing from others around the state about what that conversation might look like.
Well, I can tell you, it's a jealousy thing. It's a jealousy thing that those who have been out and worked in the community and have been successful are basically saying, well, you need to come to see us before you get our support. I have a problem with it. I served with Stacey. I thought she was smart, intelligent, and she could handle herself on the Georgia House of Representatives floor. And that's dealing with the speaker or anybody else who might oppose her when she was discussing a bill. But not only did she get out the legislature, what we found and what we saw is that she turned folks out. She went and fought the governor and the state of Georgia in court about the expulsion of black voters. Exact idea is what they call it. In other words, that your signature don't look like it looked 20 years ago. Or your name might be David Lucas and they had David E. And when they sent it back to you, they never would tell you what the problem was. All you had to do, if they told you what the problem was, all you had to do was say your name was David Lucas and not David E. Lucas. And so those kind of things happen to us. And then, of course, I've had some conversations with some men who talk about the Bible and talk about the man at the head of the household. And I can't let no woman be head of me. I say, well, you say you got a wife. When things happen, who got your back? When you go to work and the kids are sick, who see about the kid? And then of course,
and they might have a woman who's a boss at work. They ain't gonna quit their job.
No. And so I say I call it Negroid jealousology is what I call it. And that's a new word, but it's jealousy. Black women have been the backbone of this country. They would fight when the husband couldn't fight. And they worked in all our campaigns. They put the schedules together. They do the phone banking. They make sure the robocall, you get the robocall done, and then they turn around and take the checkbook and pay for it. Make sure the bill is paid. You know, because one thing about these companies, if you can't pay for it, they're not going to do it on credit. And so she has exemplified a person who cares about a community. And she's talked about health care. And she's taken the conversation to another level because now, we just had a hospital in Atlanta closed, Wellstock. And this governor decided that he would put $130 million to see about the beds going over to Grady. Well, rural Georgia is altogether different. They don't have big corporations that can help fund these hospitals. So what they need are clinics that are equipped and have doctors. And what we find out, Roland, is a doctor in a community is worth $1 million of economics. And when you start talking about bringing folks to a community about jobs and everything, the first thing, the guy who's head of that corporation, well, he's going to look at what kind of health care I got for the folks who are going to be working for me, because he's got to pay that insurance cost. And if you don't have medical help within that community, his cost is going to be higher. So economics is a very good part of that. And you know, one of the things Senator Warnock did, I'm a diabetic. I take insulin. But I have Medicare A. I don't have the rest of it because I pay for insurance with the state. But by capping that cost, no more than $35. And then, of course, he was involved with trying to cap the cost of out-of-pocket, what you pay when you go to the hospital and get sick. Out of pocket, the child cabinet at $2,000. That helps a whole lot of folks. And guess what? They don't look like me either.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a conversation that I've actually had. I mean, I know the conversation, but what I'm saying is I haven't not had conversation with men saying they weren't going to support.
Let me set it up this way, because this has actually been an issue for the last decade. A lot of people kept saying that, these men didn't want to vote for Hillary against Donald Trump. I said, first of all, if you go back to 2012, there was a 9-point gap between black men and black women nationally who voted Obama-Romney. And then it went up to 13 points in 2016. It went up again in 2020. One black pollster said that the effect of a bump in black males voting for Trump actually helped Republican candidates down ballot. Case Tom Tillis in North Carolina. And so I've heard the dissatisfaction. I've heard brothers say that they don't believe that they are getting a return on their investment. And there were brothers who were not happy with Obama, who felt that he did not do enough, which is why you had that gap. But the reality still is black men are the second largest voting bloc for the entire Democratic Party. It's also part of this that the party, I have no problem saying it, led by largely white strategists, have refused to craft a black male-specific plan to answer that, because anywhere else in politics, if you see a 9-point gap and they go to 13 and they go to 17, you playing with fire. Anybody else would say, I think what they've done is, well, it's going to take care of itself. No, actually, it's not. And so there has to be a counter to the data, because the data is not lying. The data is real.
Now, in 18, so Georgia did have a gap between black men and black women, but the actual number of it was about 24,000 votes. Now, in a very close election, it can turn the election.
Now, hold up now. You said 24,000 votes.
Correct.
How many votes did Biden-Harris win the state by?
11,000.
11,000.
Right. Now, I'm talking about in 18.
No, I understand that.
Yeah,
my point is, Biden-Harris wins this state by 11,000 votes. Sherry Beasley in North Carolina lost her re-election for Chief Justice of the Supreme Court by 400 votes. Obama won North Carolina in 2008 by 14,100 votes. Those 24,000 votes can make the difference between winning and losing.
Without a doubt. That's not what I'm actually saying. What I'm saying is that the numbers don't show that there's this gigantic schism between black men and black women. That's my point. Now, yes, in a close election, it can definitely make a difference. So my point would be that's going to happen because no group is monolithic. So when we're not talking about 200,000. So if we're talking about 24,000, here becomes my question. How do I make up that 24,000 gap with more African-American men or those from other places, from other communities? That to me is the question we ought to be facing.
See, I'm going to push back on you.
How do I make up that gap with those men?
I'm going to push back on you because here's the deal. If the numbers are trending up, I have to ask the question, why? And then when I ask the question, why, then there has to be a counter to how do I now? Because if those were folks who used to vote for you, you got a better shot of bringing them back into the fold than somebody who has never voted for you.
Or has not. Or someone who's a new voter or maybe has not voted. But I think that the key thing is if we promote the fact that African-American men and African-American women have always worked together. And as you said, we're the second most loyal database. It works as a group. And that becomes my point. Our audience here is full of African-American men and African-American women, without a doubt. Now, do I want to find out maybe what spurred those 24,000? Yeah. But men, historically, beyond race, are a little bit more conservative anyway. But even with that 24,000, my question might be, are those persons looking at from a standpoint of business development? Because, we have a lot of hyper-capitalists out there, black men, who have all these different businesses. That may be one issue.
Right, which means that the candidates should be, that's why I said you have to ask the why,
right.
Because if that's one of their issues, candidates have to address that issue, and they might go, oh, you have a plan for that? Now I can listen to, as opposed to not listen to.
And it may be one of crime because
could be.
areas around. So I think that's legitimate to ask into that. And I think that's good points. That's good questions. The part that disappoints me, I guess, is if we just do a general, there's this great schism between black men and black women, and that does not exist. And historically it hasn't. And we can give stories, but one of the things I always point out to people is, if you ask someone whether it's white, Hispanic, etc., and of course there's logistical reasons on some of those groups, African Americans have 3 women that stood out in the 70s and late 60s. Fannie Lee Hamer, Shirley Chisholm, Barbara Jordan. We've always supported black women.
No, hold up. 1972, Shirley Chisholm, they had the Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana. Why wasn't Shirley Chisholm at the Black Political Convention?
Right.
Because the black men did not support her run for president.
But without a doubt, to actually have those women up there.
I got you,
right.
But the brothers didn't support her.
But
I'm just letting you know.
Well, we know,
and I've talked to them.
Some without a doubt did, and I think that we can get ourselves in trouble because there's some blacks didn't support Obama. I mean, very, very little.
Oh no, absolutely.
Yeah. So the point is, we'll never have.
All I'm saying is, we have to. What I'm saying is, 2 things has to happen. We have to be having a conversation internally about, okay, what is your frustration? What do you seek? What do you desire? When I hear people, brother, when I hear people say, we want tangibles, first of all, I got to walk people through. No candidate can give you a tangible, first of all, when they're running. That's called a campaign promise. 2, they have to win. So if you don't vote, they don't win, you ain't getting no damn tangible. But 3rd, even if they do win, that person solely can't give it to you because it still has to get passed. I really believe we need to have a Schoolhouse Rock 2.0 because there's a bunch of people clearly who have no clue how politics works. That's 1. But 2, the Democratic apparatus, largely led by white strategists, has to listen to black people and black elected officials and black pollsters who have been telling them there's a problem. They've been turning a blind eye and then not wanting to put the resources to create specific strategies to reach them. And they go, well, they'll come around, and then when the election is over, then it's, well, the brothers didn't vote. Well, if you don't go after them with resources, they ain't going to see and vote for you. And last point, this new generation is less likely to self-identify as a Democrat. They might eventually end up voting that way, but they don't self-identify as a part of this thing as well.
But we also have to be willing at the same time, not only to do the resources, and that's one piece of it, but we also have to be willing at the same time to actually talk about issues and not be afraid to actually say how that affect the African American community.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
becomes important. And I think that's where the Democrats may miss, where if you're going to talk about Medicaid expansion,
specifically how this impacts.
Senator Warner and Stacey do a good job with this to talk about how it affects that community.
But I also challenge them to be specific to say white.
Right.
Like literally go to white voters and say, hey, you white, this impacts you, because what often happens is people have messaging that target us, target Latinos, target Asians, but won't actually have a white message. Guess what? You got to be real with white folks too.
And I think we have to have that message to talk about when we economic development. If we're in rural Georgia, economic development, of course, is going to affect all. But certainly, are there any potential proposals or plans that we can specifically target towards African Americans and not be afraid to actually say that? That, I think, is also going to reach a lot of persons, too. And that's one of the key things that we're usually afraid of doing is we say, well, we can't do that openly because then we won't get elected. And that's not necessarily been my experience. I've been elected to office twice now, senator and also as a solicitor. A solicitor is a prosecutor. And as a prosecutor, I talked about progressive prosecution. And now you see more people doing that. Yep. My experience really has been that if you're open and honest and say what you're going to do to really try to help folks, they are going to go to the polls to actually put you in. We allow our politicians many times off the hook when they say, well, I can't really get into how it will affect the African-American community, but once I get in there, I can do this. It doesn't work that way. If they're not doing the promise now, they won't do it later.
And even though when you look at the actual data, again, we break our health data down by race. We break our economic down by race. I mean, it's just stop trying to run from it. You know, it is what it is. And to the focus, of my book, look, By 2043, this nation is going to be a nation majority people of color. Look, the average white annual death rate in about 12 states is higher than the annual white birth rate. It's called data. You're not going backwards. You can yell, "Make America Great Again" all day if you want to. You can wear red hat, blue hat, yellow hat. We ain't going back to the 1950s. It's just simply not happening. But I do want to shift this because I do want to get waiting on us here. I do want to know, how is the immigration debate playing out in conversations you're hearing with people? Because that's also one where Republicans are making inroads, because you do have, even though 10% of the black population in the United States are black immigrants, that is a potent issue, because you have a lot of African Americans, especially brothers, who say, man, they are taking our jobs. They are, in many ways, they're sounding like white men. But again, when people even say that, they're taking our jobs, I'm sitting there going, yeah, but do you want to do a lot of those jobs? It's a whole different separate conversation. But the issue of immigration is a potent issue that works with a certain segment of our community, black men and black women. What are you hearing? How's the conversation going? How's that playing out here? Go ahead.
Well, I haven't heard that much about immigration amongst people that I talk to, but you're right about that, because some of the men, white and black, especially at my job, and I work at over in Savannah at International Paper, and they tell me, they say, well, man, you know, we are watching news out there on our break and things like that, and I had one black guy tell me, he was like, man, if Biden don't do something about that border, I'm not going to have no job too long. And I said, what you mean by that, man? I said, you got a job now? I said, no, man, because they're cheap. You don't got to pay them anything. They're cheap labor. And he like, yeah, but you don't have, he need to cut me off. He said, man, Biden need to build a wall. He need to do something. He needs to do something about these people coming in. And see, me, I told him, I said, look, I hear what you're saying. And in my opinion, a wall's not going to solve the problem. Because they're going to find a way to get in, whether through a tunnel underground or smuggle through an 18-wheeler.
So what he didn't say how are elected officials holding companies accountable. See, that is the real thing about this immigration debate that nobody wants to talk about. And the Chamber of Commerce don't want to talk about it. They don't. Because the reality is, when you talk about this notion of cheap labor, who hires cheap labor? And if we really want to be honest, with ourselves, how many people who have been looking for somebody to either cut their grass or fix their roof were like, let me go look for cheap labor? See, and so it's the folk who are hiring individuals. See, I love it in this country where we talk about, hey, man, we want high-paying jobs, but then we also want cheap pair of jeans. See, and so I think that's an issue we have to confront. But this is a potent issue because it is an economic one, and a person is saying, that guy is saying, I fear I'm losing my job, and that's a real thing. Go ahead.
You know, the problem about immigration is this: we don't do what we used to do. We don't pick peaches, cotton, and the vegetables that come out the fields. Those folks come in. The reason I talk about it, for 10 years I was in the bus business. I had a contract with the North Carolina Farmers Association. I used to go to Laredo, Texas. They have an agent down there. They got the green card and everything, and I used to bring them back to the United States. And all the down the coast, Virginia, North Carolina, and they worked. If they didn't have them, they couldn't get the crop out the field. You know, but the other thing, Roland, that has hurt us, and I see it all the time with our young folks, it's about education. I've always talked about education and the ballot. Because if you can't read, how you know what you vote on unless somebody else told you how to vote. And part of our problem is, it's just like you got a car, and it's got a rearview mirror in it. If you don't know where you come from, how you gonna know where you got to go? And so we've got to teach our young folks that we've got a history. Some of it's bad, and some of it's good, because a whole lot of us made something out of it and have gone on to better rewards. But we've got to instill in our young folks, look, it's about the book and the ballot. You don't have to go to college. You can go to technical school, aircraft mechanic, and go out on the base.
Right, and I'm glad, because I want to let you segue right into that, because having that education conversation, what has happened in the last 30 years, really 40 years, we shifted into this whole deal of got to go to a 4-year school, got to get that degree. The problem now is states no longer fund colleges at that level, so now the burden is shifting to the individual and the parent. And so now you got folks who literally are walking around with $120,000, $130,000, $150,000 worth of debt, and the jobs that they're getting, there's no way they can actually pay that back. I also think that from the education side, and I know why it shifted, because in the early 70s, they were pushing black kids and Latino kids into trades in a technical school and away from 4-year schools. And black parents were like, no, we want our kids to be doctors and lawyers. If you read James D. Anderson's book, The Education of Blacks in the South, 1860 to 1935, the same thing happened when Hampton started. They wanted them to keep farming. The parents said, no, we don't want our kids to be farmers. But what's happening now is we now have a job shortage of skill set. That's one. And we push folk, and because we no longer make a lot of stuff, our economy has totally changed. Technology has totally changed it. And so it used to be you could actually work at a grocery store. You could actually work at a bank. You could be a teller. You could have a middle-class job, buy cars, send your kids to school. When the last time you been to a bank?
Don't have that many of that.
No, but the point is, technology is changing. I can take a picture of the check, click OK. Right. I don't even. Somebody told me I had to write a check. I was like, where the hell is a check? I couldn't figure out what the check was. So so I think what has to happen, which is why I'm glad you're talking about education. I think politically we got to be pushing our political leaders to also redefine how we look at education, because we know we have a skill set deficit today. Master plumbers, and I know, folk, there's some parent out here. You ain't gonna tell your friends my son's a plumber. You would rather say my son's a lawyer. But a master plumber makes 6 figures.
That's right.
So I think there also has to be a change of our view of the future jobs in terms of also education and how we're developing them and the resources going towards that. Go ahead.
Mr. Martin, one of the things...
Mr. Martin, my daddy, I'm Roland.
Oh. Roland, one of the things I ran for Board of Education here locally in Emanuel County, and part of my platform was to make sure that our students were workforce ready. We've got so many students that are graduating from high school. They're not going to the military. They're not going to college. But where are they going? Well, we've got a growing gang population in our city, in our county. And because we're not preparing these kids for a workforce so that they're prepared, when they graduate, okay, I'm not going anywhere, but I can get this job here making $30, $40 an hour, but we're not preparing them for it. Here's the second part to that, though. They responded to me, many folks, and said, well, we do have a program in the county where folks can go and learn about different trades and have opportunities. Well, we have the information, but we don't have the access. So the issue is, while we may know that it's available, right, it's not ready accessible to the children that look like myself and you. So what we have to do then is to, as we work on our workforce readiness platform, hey, we're getting all these kids ready, we're getting them ready for what they're going to see. We have to also give them access to the same opportunities that others are afforded.
Are the candidates, though, are you hearing them talk about that? Are you hearing it?
I haven't heard anything from anyone. Now,
It's on. Just talk right into it. Talk
all
into
right.
it.
Now, Charlie Bailey, running for lieutenant governor. I talked with him last week, and he brought that up about trades, about pushing more of our young people into the trade field. And see, me, I told him, I said, from my experience, I went to a trade school. At first, I wouldn't go to a college. I want to go to Columbus State and Alabama A&M. But I went to South Georgia Tech. I majored in welding, technology. I also took aircraft structural technology. I got 2 degrees from there. Blueprint reading, I got a degree in that as well. I mean, a diploma in that as well. The jobs that I've had in the past, I've done multiple jobs there because, as you said, there's a work shortage. They said, hey, Keith, you got the forklift? Yeah, okay. Although I'm a welder, I was a certified welder at the time. I could weld, but I had to do other things because we could not attract people to come in and go to work. And then when we did have people come in and go to work, they would lose their jobs because if they have an accident on the job, take a drug test, you're out the door. And to me, I hate to change the subject. I think now's the time for Georgia to legalize marijuana because there's a lot of guys, when you say about black men, young black men, the majority of them that I know, that I've talked with, when I bring that up, oh yeah, you do that, I'll go vote tomorrow. That's what they say. That's what they say. And I like, what about jobs or tax? No. You legalize marijuana, I'll vote tomorrow. That's what they say. And they for real. So I'm like, okay, then that's an issue, but no one so far, I've not heard anyone on the trail mention that about legalization of marijuana. If Stacey was to come out tomorrow and say that, she probably get 52-53% of the vote. That's what I'm saying.
Go ahead. I would say on the top of the ticket, I said the whole ticket, really, you were asking about candidates saying that. I think that you have where Senator Warnock or Stacey Abrams, 2 of the most progressive candidates we've ever seen in Georgia as far as really articulating issues that's going to affect middle-class folks and especially even African Americans. But I also want to go back to one of the issues you talked about the immigration. So the conversation, of course, is real in this sense because when African Americans are so below so many metrics, it becomes disheartening if they start seeing other groups come in and take their place, so to speak, in their mind. So you have to understand that part. So then the question becomes, now how did I deal with that from a policy standpoint? One of the great things right here, talking about rural areas, let's look at it from a policy standpoint from Georgia. Hemp, as you know, is now legal. Not marijuana yet, but hemp now is legal. But we've actually
hemp is the cousin of marijuana.
There you go. Can't get high off of it. So, but we've actually limited the number of licenses that can go out. Now, you don't have persons necessarily who are not from, United States getting these licenses, but here's the point. Here you have all these persons who have been incarcerated, even here. Now, they may not be farmers as such, but they're in Swainsboro, they've been incarcerated. Hemp licenses now go out. None of those licenses are going to African Americans or African American farmers. Certainly that's going to be something that you will look at and say, we're still going backwards. Every single method that we have.
Because when they, even on the marijuana side, because like in California, if you had a conviction, you couldn't get a dispensary.
Right. And so even the things that we were prosecuted for, we're still not able to get a leg up. So you can see.
Prosecuted for marijuana, but I can't get a dispensary license for marijuana.
Dispensary license for it.
It's the same weed.
Same weed. And you can see how that would affect persons. So therefore, from a policy standpoint, we need to open up hemp licenses. I know that Senator Warnock and both states are talking about helping black farmers without a doubt. And I also know that license should be opened up. That's a policy issue.
Right.
But here's number 2. Not only should we give more licenses, we also should say that those licenses should go to African American farmers. Those are real policy things that we can actually try to push. Even if we don't get it through, we can at least talk about it. That helps on that immigration kind of conversation. And when you were talking about marijuana, if you're legalizing it and you don't have some type of equity program, you ought to be ashamed of yourself if that's what you're going to do.
Absolutely. Got about 3 or 4 minutes left. I want each of you to speak to this here. There's somebody, maybe sitting in this audience, and maybe somebody who's watching, there's somebody who's in this community, and they're like, Okay, this is all great and wonderful. That all sounds nice. That's cute. But I just simply do not believe that my vote matters. Going down the line, what would you say to that person if you had 30 seconds to look them in the eye? What would you say to them as to why they should vote early, beginning October 17th, or they should go to those polls on Election Day in the first Tuesday in November? What would you tell that person?
The history of our country is no secret. And if you do not seize the opportunity to vote today, you are most certain to relive the world that we knew yesterday.
Okay.
It's hard to tell them, Roland, but if you don't vote, you don't count.
Well, what I'll say is think about your future or your child's future. Because I got a 2-year-old, I got a 13-year-old out there in the audience. What happened in November is going to affect them 4 or 8 or 12 years down the road. Mm-hmm. Don't never say your vote doesn't count. Because I'm going to tell you right now, because a lot of people out here who don't vote, and then when things don't go their way, then they're complaining all the time. Well, they ain't doing nothing for me. What did you vote? No, I didn't vote. So that's why I tell them, get out and vote. Your vote matters.
Absolutely. If persons didn't think the vote mattered, then Georgia wouldn't be creating bills like SB 202 to make sure you don't have the opportunity to vote. And secondly, when you talk about something that happened today with President Biden pardoning persons on marijuana, whether it's talking about school debt, that came about from voting. Some of the negative that we talked about today, the lack of Medicaid expansion, that lack of it comes about through voting. So your vote actually does matter. So you see it from a positive standpoint, you see it immediately from a negative standpoint. Absolutely is there, the connections are there. How your vote does matter.
So I would say this here. If you tell somebody about our history, they're not listening. They're not. I think you have to ask that person, what's the one thing you care about? Doesn't matter what the issue is. And then you have to connect that one thing they care about to the people who can actually change it. So what happens, so we literally have to do voter education. I can't tell you how many people I deal with in my business every single day who literally think that stuff just happens and this has no bearing on it. 2016, I had a young woman from North Carolina call my radio show, and she said, I don't like Hillary Clinton. I can't stand Trump. I'm just going to focus on my state issues. She's an activist. I then asked her, all right, what are the 3 things you're working on? She told me. All 3 things she said also were connected to who was president, and then who was the U.S. Senator, and then who was member. So she thought that these were just isolated state issues, not realizing that was a direct bearing on who's in the White House, who's in Congress. And so we actually have to do that. We actually have to take the time to walk folk through. And then after we do that, we also have to then ensure that if they do register, how do they get to the polls? And so a lot of times we expend so much energy on talking to people about voting, but then we're not making sure they're registered. Then after they're registered, then making sure they actually vote. Last point I'll make is this here. Your mission should be, however your vote works here, whatever your precinct is, those are public numbers. You could go look up how many people voted in this precinct, how many people voted in this location in the last election. It'll show you how many people in the area are registered. So if you see that 122 people voted and 1,100 are registered, that's 1,000 people you should be trying to touch, because literally your sole area can change the election. I told you Sherry Beasley, yes, she's running for the United States Senator right now, but she lost by 400 votes. 2020, the Virginia legislature was decided by a coin flip because the candidates tied in the vote. And when they flipped the coin, that's to determine whether Democrats control the legislature or Republicans control the legislature. A coin flip. So imagine the people who never voted. And so we must take that time. That's why on my show, we try to teach as much as we can, walking people through what public policy is, how it's being impacted. And so take the time. Don't get frustrated with somebody, because the reality is not everybody lives and breathes this stuff, but you got to connect what they care about with the folk who are in office. You got to show them how, if the people who are in office aren't doing it, you got to take them out and put the folks in who can do it.
Thank you so much for coming to Swainsboro, Georgia. When they first told me about it, I said, Roland Martin's going to be in Swainsboro? Really? In person? So we really just appreciate you for coming to Emanuel County. We appreciate these wonderful panelists. Didn't they do a great job, y'all? I've got one piece of housekeeping that I need to take care of. I understand that there are at least 2 elected officials in the audience that we want to ask to stand and be recognized. I believe they are Mr. John Parker, who is on the Swainsboro City Council. And we have Mayor Pro Tem Bobby Collins, who is also with Swainsboro City Council. Thank you all. Thank you all for your role in making Swainsboro what it is and what you hope it to be in the future. There are 2 more people I need to introduce. This will be my last time at the mic, but I need to introduce Ms. Barbara Carlisle. I understand that she's going to give us a little entertainment before we close. And as well, we will have a closing prayer by Dr. Merrill Bell. Thank you all so much for allowing me to come to Swainsboro today.
Good evening. No, that's not everybody. Good evening. Good evening. I thought some more people will be here, but it's like we're having a Halloween party. People came dressed as chairs. What y'all needed to do was to get on y'all phones, go to Facebook, go to TikTok, go to wherever you had to go and tell people that right now in Swainsboro, Georgia, they're giving out the PPP loan. I bet the line will be from here to Walmart. And I don't mean the one here in Swainsboro, I mean the one in Statesboro. And y'all know that's what the people wanted to do. If we were talking about the PPP loan, people would be here. You know, because anybody that thought they had a business, they came out. People selling eyelashes. Done got a LLC. LLC stand for look like cash. $20,000 and you selling eyelashes. It's crazy. But if I had to tell you something today, the one thing that I want you to do is go back and tell somebody that knows somebody that got a car or a truck or a SUV that can take people to the polls and let them vote. I must admit, I'm 64 years old, and politics didn't matter to me the first 30, 40 years of my life. Okay, I'm going to be honest, the first 55 years of my life. But then I started to see that we were losing out on a lot of things down here in Emanuel County. I had moved to New York, and I came back, and I went back again, and then COVID said, come back and sit down for a little while. So I came back, and I sat down for a little while, and I didn't like what I saw. So it's up to us to get out and push this. Let people know your vote will count. It will count. Do what you got to do. You know, you got to get out there and just do the groundwork. And the elected officials will hopefully do what they need to do to get us out of this rut, because that's exactly what we are in. We are in a rut. So don't worry about the PPP loans. Don't worry about the little girl selling eyelashes. Don't worry about anything. Just worry about the fact that we can come up if you're willing to come up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Roland Martin, teaching us and talking to us on this wonderful night, talking to us to a language not that we know, but a language that we understand to help redirect our mindset. Thank you. Give him a hand clap, y'all. Precious Father God, we thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you again for the loving kindness. Thank you for what we have seen here tonight. We ask you to continue to bless this man as he go forth, telling and teaching us about the way we need and learn how to do things. Lord, we ask you to cover him as he go, guide him and be a lamp unto his feet. But most of all, bless everyone that's under the sound of my voice. We thank you in advance of what you was about to do, and we claim victory in Jesus' name. Amen, amen, and amen.
All right, to all the folks who are watching, thanks a bunch. We'll see y'all tomorrow from Houston, Texas, where we'll be with Black Voters Matter from the campus of Texas Southern University. So H-Town, y'all show up and show out, and I'll be happy to be going back to 3rd Ward because you know my high school, Jack Yates, is right across the street. Don't forget, download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Support us in what we do by joining our Bring the Funk fan club. Checking money orders to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Of course, Cash App is $RM Unfiltered, PayPal R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo is RM Unfiltered, Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Thanks to the folks here in Swainsboro. Thank you so very much. Thank you to the War Night campaign. And y'all know how we always end the show. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Holla!